I'll give you my ranch, you heal, the rich rancher laughed, until the Apache's son did the impossible. Mara Jensen had never thought she would start over at her age, especially not after losing everything she had loved. The life she had built with her husband had ended abruptly, leaving her alone with grief that seemed to stretch as far as the desert plains she now gazed at. She had sold every possession she could, taking all the money she had saved, and bought a small cabin in the remote mountains of planet Navara. It was a simple cabin, made of wood that looked both sturdy and old, standing against the wind that blew constantly across the barren landscape. For Mara, it was more than a shelter. It was a chance to find peace, to breathe without the weight of sorrow pressing on her chest. When she first arrived, the cabin looked empty. The forest around it was quiet, only broken by the rustling of strange, tall plants and the occasional call of alien birds. Mara felt a sense of relief she had not felt in months. The air was crisp, and the view of the mountains in the distance was breathtaking. She carried her boxes inside, placing her few possessions carefully on the wooden shelves and tables. For the first time in a long time, she felt a glimmer of hope. That night, Mara lit the fireplace for the first time. The warmth and the soft light made the cabin feel alive, almost welcoming. She unpacked her few books and started writing in a small journal, recording her thoughts and the events of the day. She thought she was alone. She thought she had found her private world where nothing could touch her, but she was wrong. In the corner of the cabin, hidden in shadows, someone watched. He moved silently, a figure who blended with the dark. His presence was so quiet that Mara did not notice at first. He was tall and lean, with eyes that seemed to see everything at once. He had lived in these mountains for years, learning every secret path, every hidden corner of the forest. The settlers called him the Apache, though he had never asked for the name. They feared him because he was always calm, always prepared, and always capable of vanishing without a trace. Mara did not know his story yet, and she could not guess what he thought of her presence. The next morning, Mara stepped outside to water the small garden she had planted. She had chosen simple vegetables and herbs, imagining herself living quietly, growing her own food and breathing in the fresh air. As she bent to pull weeds, she felt the sense of being watched again. She straightened, looking around, but saw nothing. Only the forest swayed gently in the wind and the distant mountains held their silence. She shook her head. Maybe it was just her imagination, she thought. Maybe the loneliness had made her nervous. Days passed, and Mara started to feel more at home. She chopped firewood, cleaned the cabin, and explored the forest around her. She found strange, glowing plants and small animals with fur that shimmered in the sunlight. She began to map the area in her journal, noting the locations of springs, cliffs, and hidden caves. Each day, she felt stronger, more capable. The cabin no longer felt like a temporary refuge. It felt like home. Then one evening, she heard it. A soft sound outside, almost like the brushing of feet against the forest floor. She froze, her heart pounding. She grabbed the small lantern from the table and stepped outside, holding it in front of her. The forest was quiet. Only the wind moved the leaves and the stars shone in the clear sky above. But she could feel it, someone was close. "Hello," she called, her voice trembling. "Is someone there?" No answer came, just silence. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, as if the trees themselves had eyes. Mara backed slowly into the cabin, locking the door behind her. She could not see him, but she could feel him. The Apache had noticed her. She did not know if he meant to harm her or not, but his presence was undeniable. The next day, Mara tried to act as if nothing had happened. She went about her chores, fetching water from the nearby spring, repairing the fence around the garden, and cleaning the cabin. But at every step, she felt eyes on her. Sometimes she would catch a shadow moving among the trees or hear a soft whisper of footsteps on the forest floor. It was unsettling, and she knew she could not ignore it. Then one morning, she found something that made her heart stop. A small pile of stones had been arranged near the cabin door. At first, she thought it was just a natural formation. But the stones were not random. They were carefully stacked, 3 high with a sharp, straight line cut into the middle. It was a message. Someone had been watching, waiting, and now they were making their presence known. Mara's hands shook as she picked up the stones, feeling a mix of fear and curiosity. That night, she stayed awake by the fire, listening. The wind blew cold and the cabin creaked. She could not sleep, thinking of the shadowy figure who might be outside. She wondered who he was, why he was here, and if he would leave her alone. Hours passed, and eventually the fire died down. Mara leaned back in her chair, trying to calm her racing heart. She told herself that she had faced hardships before. She was a widow, yes, but she was strong. She could handle this. And yet, when she looked at the corner of the room, she swore she saw two glowing eyes staring at her. The next morning, she decided she had to confront whoever was there. She packed a small bag with essentials, a knife, a lantern, and a journal, and stepped outside. The forest was quiet, but she moved carefully, scanning every shadow. She walked toward the trees where she had seen movement, calling out softly, "I know you're there. Please show yourself. I don't want trouble." For a long time, nothing happened. Then slowly a figure emerged. He was tall and muscular, with sharp features and eyes that reflected the sunlight. His movements were calm, almost graceful, as if he was part of the forest itself. He stopped a few feet from her, watching her with intensity. Myra felt a shiver run down her spine. This was the Apache, the one everyone feared, and now he was standing in front of her. "I have been watching you," he said, his voice deep and even. "You are not like the others." Mara's mouth went dry. She had expected threats, warnings, perhaps even anger. Instead, there was curiosity and a strange sense of calm. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Why are you watching me?" He studied her for a long moment. "This forest is mine to protect," he said finally. "You have entered it. I need to know if you respect it or if you are like the others who take without thinking." Myra swallowed hard. She had come here to live quietly, not to fight or take anything. I want to live here," she said. "I don't want to hurt anything, I just want a home." The Apache nodded slowly. "We will see," he said. "If you are careful and if you learn, you may stay. But know this, the forest does not forgive easily, and neither do I." From that moment, Mara's life changed. She was no longer alone in the cabin. She was no longer free from fear, but she was alive and she was learning. Learning that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to face it. Learning that humans, even fragile and grieving humans, could survive, adapt, and even earn the respect of those who seemed impossible to reach. And Mara knew one thing clearly. Life in this cabin would never be simple again. Mara woke early the next morning, her mind still filled with the image of the Apache standing in the forest. She could not forget his calm, steady gaze and the way he seemed part of the land itself. The memory made her both nervous and curious. She had spent her life relying on her own skills, but here, in this wild and unfamiliar place, she realized she would need guidance. She decided that if she was going to stay in this cabin, she would have to learn from him. She prepared herself carefully, choosing her clothes to blend with the forest colors and carrying a small bag with essentials: a water flask, some bread, a knife, and her journal. She stepped outside, the morning air crisp and clear, carrying both determination and uncertainty. The forest seemed alive in a way she had never noticed before. Strange plants swayed as if acknowledging her presence, and alien birds with shimmering feathers watched silently from high branches. As she moved toward the area where she had first seen the Apache, she thought about what she would say. She wanted to show him she was serious about living respectfully in this forest. She had no idea if he would even respond, but she had to try. She found him near a small stream, kneeling and tending to the roots of a glowing blue plant she had never seen before. He moved carefully, deliberately, as though every action mattered. Mara watched him for a moment, then stepped forward. "I want to learn," she said softly. "Please teach me how to live here." The Apache straightened slowly, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Learning is not just about watching," he said. "It is about understanding. You must first understand why this forest exists and why it is not yours to control." Mara nodded. She had expected lessons about survival, about fire-making or hunting, but he was talking about respect. She felt a strange mixture of humility and eagerness. He gestured for her to follow him. They walked silently through the forest, moving along hidden paths Mara could never have found on her own. He pointed out edible plants, explained which leaves could be used for medicine, and showed her how to find clean water sources. Every lesson was paired with a warning. One wrong step could harm the forest or herself. Mara tried to memorize everything. She practiced gathering herbs under his watchful eyes, learning the delicate balance of the ecosystem. She realized that she had always thought survival meant dominance, taming land, controlling animals, but here, survival was about harmony, patience, and observation. One afternoon, as they walked near a cliff overlooking a valley, the Apache paused. "You see that?" he asked. Mara looked down and saw a group of humans, strangers to the area, cutting down trees and leaving the land scarred. "They don't understand," Mara whispered. "No," the Apache said, "but you can help them understand. That is part of learning." Mara realized that living here would not just be about her own safety. She would have to protect this forest and the life within it. She felt a mixture of fear and responsibility settle over her. The task was enormous, but she felt stronger knowing she was not alone. Days turned into weeks. Mara's hands grew calloused from carrying water and gathering herbs. Her body grew stronger from climbing cliffs, walking through thick underbrush, and building protective barriers around the cabin. The Apache continued to test her, not with violence but with challenges that pushed her to think and adapt. One day, he led her to a small pond hidden deep in the forest. The water was clear and pure, reflecting the sky above. He handed her a large leaf and motioned for her to scoop some water. "Drink," he said. Mara drank carefully. The water was cool and refreshing. She felt a strange energy, a connection to the forest she had never felt before. "This is not magic," the Apache said. "It is life. Life that exists because you respect it." Later, as the sun began to set, Mara noticed movement near the edge of the forest. A pack of alien predators, small but fast, had entered the area near her cabin. They were curious, cautious, but dangerous if provoked. Mara froze, unsure what to do. The Apache moved swiftly, placing himself between Mara and the predators. He raised a hand, and the creatures hesitated. Mara watched in awe as he communicated with them silently, his eyes calm but commanding. Slowly, the predators turned and disappeared into the forest. "You must learn to move like them," he said to her after the creatures left. "Quiet, patient, aware, then you will not need to fight." Mara spent hours practicing, moving silently through the forest, observing every sound and shadow. She learned to notice small changes: the angle of the sun, the rustle of leaves, the faint scent of alien plants. She began to anticipate movements before they happened, a skill she had never imagined she could develop. One morning, she discovered signs that humans were approaching the cabin again. Footprints, broken branches, and discarded items marked their path. Mara felt fear rising but also determination. She remembered everything the Apache had taught her: the balance of strength and patience, the value of observing before acting. She prepared the cabin and its surroundings carefully. Using fallen branches and stones, she created simple barriers and warning signs, disguising them with moss and leaves. She set traps not to harm, but to alert her to movement and protect the forest's boundaries. When the humans arrived, Mara was ready. They tried to enter the cabin, thinking it was abandoned, but the traps alerted her. She moved silently through the forest, observing their approach. She could hear their voices, rough and careless, laughing as they assumed they would find easy prey. Mara stepped out of the shadows, her figure almost invisible against the trees. She did not shout. She did not charge. She simply stood, calm and confident, her eyes focused. The humans froze when they saw her, unsure what to make of the small, quiet woman who seemed to have the strength of the entire forest behind her. "You do not belong here," she said softly but firmly. "Leave this place and do not return." The humans laughed at first, thinking she could not possibly stop them. But Mara was patient. She led them on a careful chase, guiding them toward traps and natural barriers. The forest itself seemed to help her, branches and roots creating obstacles that slowed the intruders. By the time they returned to their ships, they were exhausted, frustrated, and convinced the forest, and Mara, were not to be trifled with. When the danger passed, Mara returned to the cabin, her heart still racing but her spirit stronger than ever. She knew she had succeeded not because she had fought, but because she had learned and adapted. The Apache watched silently from the trees, a faint smile on his face. "You are ready," he said finally. "You understand what it means to live here. You respect life, and life respects you." Mara felt a sense of pride she had not known in years. She had come to this cabin seeking peace, but she had found something more: courage, skill, and the knowledge that she could survive and thrive in a world far different from anything she had known. Over the next weeks, Mara continued to learn from the Apache. They worked together to care for the land, creating gardens and paths that blended seamlessly with the forest. Mara learned to communicate with the creatures of the forest, to sense danger before it arrived, and to anticipate the movements of the alien predators. She also learned patience. The forest moved slowly, carefully, and she had to match its pace. Every action had consequences, and she began to understand the delicate balance of life around her. One evening, as they watched the sun set behind the mountains, Mara realized how far she had come. She had faced fear, uncertainty, and danger, yet she had grown stronger, smarter, and more capable. The Apache, once a figure of fear, had become her mentor and guide, showing her that humans could adapt, survive, and even excel in places that seemed impossible. Mara knew that life in this cabin would never be simple. She would continue to face challenges, both from the forest and from other humans who did not understand its power. But she was no longer afraid. She had learned, she had adapted, and she had proven to herself that she could rise to any challenge. And as she looked out over the forest, the trees swaying gently in the evening light, Mara felt a deep sense of belonging. She was part of this land now, and it was part of her. Together, she and the Apache would protect it, thrive within it, and show that humans, when guided by respect, intelligence, and courage, could do the impossible. The forest was no longer just a place of isolation. It was a place of learning, growth, and triumph. Mara had survived, adapted, and earned her place. And she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready. Mara Jensen had grown stronger over the past weeks. The cabin no longer felt like a fragile shelter, but a home she had earned through hard work, observation, and courage. She had learned from the Apache how to live with the forest rather than against it, to move quietly, to see, hear, and sense more than she ever thought possible. But she knew that peace could never last forever. The forest had its dangers, and so did humans who did not respect it. One early morning, Mara noticed something unusual. From the edge of the forest, smoke rose in thin gray plumes. At first, she thought it was just a controlled fire by other settlers, but the smoke moved strangely, spreading in unnatural patterns. She felt a knot of fear in her stomach. She knew immediately that something was wrong. The Apache appeared beside her as if sensing her concern. "Humans are approaching," he said calmly, his eyes scanning the forest. "Not friendly ones." Mara's heart raced, but she stayed quiet. She remembered everything he had taught her, patience, observation, and the power of using the forest to their advantage. Together, they moved through hidden paths, carefully observing the group as it drew closer. Mara could see men and women, armed with advanced tools and strange machines, cutting trees and setting up encampments. They were not here to learn or to live. They were here to take. "We cannot let them harm the forest," the Apache said. "You must help me stop them." Mara nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. This was the ultimate test of everything she had learned. Together, they prepared the area around the cabin, using natural barriers, traps, and signals. Mara worked tirelessly, placing stones, branches, and vines in ways that would alert them to movement and slow the intruders without causing real harm. She had learned from the Apache that survival was about strategy, not violence. As the humans approached, Mara noticed their overconfidence. They laughed, thinking that the cabin was abandoned and that any resistance would be easy to overcome. Mara and the Apache watched silently, their movements hidden, almost invisible in the forest shadows. When the intruders reached the edge of the trees near the cabin, Mara triggered a simple but clever warning system. Stones fell, branches shifted, and vines pulled taut, making noise that sounded like footsteps approaching from multiple directions. The humans froze, looking around in confusion. They could not see anyone, but the forest itself seemed alive and watching them. Mara stepped out of the shadows, holding a small staff the Apache had given her. She moved slowly and confidently, her eyes locked on the intruders. "You must leave this place," she said firmly. "It is not yours to take. If you do not leave, you will face consequences." The humans laughed, but Mara noticed that some of them hesitated. There was something in her voice, in her stance, that made them uneasy. It was not fear. It was certainty, confidence, and a connection to the land that they could not understand. The Apache joined her, emerging silently from the forest. Together, they were a force that seemed impossible. The humans tried to advance, but the traps and natural barriers slowed them down. Mara and the Apache moved through the trees, guiding the intruders into areas where the forest itself became an obstacle. Roots, branches, and hidden pits caused confusion and slowed their progress. The humans grew frustrated, their arrogance giving way to fear. Mara felt a surge of pride. She had learned everything the Apache had taught her, and now she could use it to protect the forest. She was no longer just a widow seeking peace. She was a guardian, capable of defending her home and the life within it. As the confrontation continued, one of the intruders tried to bypass the barriers, approaching Mara directly. She stayed calm, remembering the Apache's lessons. Using a combination of quick thinking and the natural tools around her, she diverted him into a pit covered with leaves. The man fell, startled and unharmed, but it was enough to demonstrate that she was not to be underestimated. The remaining intruders saw the traps, the coordinated movements, and the confidence of Mara and the Apache. Slowly, they began to retreat. Mara did not chase them. She knew that their fear of the forest and their failure to understand it was punishment enough. They fled, leaving the cabin and surrounding area untouched. After the danger passed, Mara and the Apache walked through the forest, checking that no harm had come to the animals, plants, or water sources. Mara felt a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and she had emerged stronger. She realized that humans could survive in the wild not just through strength, but through intelligence, patience, and respect. The Apache turned to her, his expression calm but proud. "You have done well," he said. "You have proven that you understand what it means to live here, not just survive, but live with purpose, respect, and wisdom." Mara smiled, feeling a sense of belonging she had never known. She had come to the cabin to escape her grief, but she had found so much more. She had found courage, skill, and the knowledge that humans could rise to challenges that seemed impossible. In the weeks that followed, Mara continued to work with the Apache. They repaired trails, improved the cabin, and tended to the forest. Mara discovered new ways to use her human ingenuity, combining simple tools and clever strategies to make life easier and safer. She learned to communicate silently with the animals, to read the patterns of the weather, and to anticipate natural dangers before they arrived. One day, Mara found a small injured creature near the cabin, a fox-like animal with shimmering fur. It had been caught in a trap left by careless humans. Mara carefully freed it, tending to its wounds with herbs she had learned to use from the Apache. The creature healed under her care and eventually returned to the forest, but it looked back at her as if acknowledging her skill and compassion. Mara realized that this was what living in harmony with the land truly meant. It was not just about survival. It was about understanding, respecting, and nurturing the world around her. Humans could be powerful, yes, but true strength came from using that power wisely, with care and intelligence. As months passed, word of Mara's resilience and skill began to spread among the nearby settlements. People spoke of the widow who lived in the cabin with the feared Apache, who had defended the forest and learned its secrets. They came to see her not as weak or alone, but as a symbol of human ingenuity and courage. Mara did not seek attention or praise. She focused on her life, the forest, and her partnership with the Apache. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Mara and the Apache sat outside the cabin. The forest was quiet, alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures beginning their nightly routines. Mara reflected on everything she had learned. She had faced fear, danger, and loneliness. She had adapted, learned, and grown. She had survived and thrived in a place that seemed impossible. The Apache turned to her and spoke softly. "You have learned well. The forest will always respect those who respect it. And humans are capable of greatness if they are willing to listen, observe, and act with wisdom." Mara smiled, feeling the truth of his words in every fiber of her being. She had come to the forest to heal her heart, but she had also discovered the strength and ingenuity that lay within her. She had faced the impossible, and she had succeeded. The cabin, once just a small refuge, had become a home filled with life, learning, and accomplishment. Mara knew that the challenges would not end. There would always be dangers both from nature and from careless humans, but she was ready. She had the skills, the courage, and the wisdom to face whatever came next. As the stars appeared in the clear night sky, Mara looked out over the forest, feeling a deep connection to the land and to the Apache. She realized that humans could not only survive, they could thrive, adapt, and even lead in places that seemed untamable. And in that moment, Mara felt a sense of peace she had never known. She was no longer just a widow seeking shelter. She was a guardian, a learner, and a survivor. She had proven that humans, when guided by intelligence, courage, and respect, could achieve the impossible. The forest around her seemed to pulse with life, a silent acknowledgement of her presence. Myra knew that she had found her true home, not just in the cabin, but in the harmony between human ingenuity and the wild world she had learned to understand and protect. Mara Jensen had started as a woman running from grief, seeking safety and solitude. Now she was something more, a symbol of resilience, skill, and the boundless potential of humans when they face challenges with courage, patience, and wisdom. And as she looked to the horizon, she knew that whatever the future held, she was ready to meet it. The forest whispered in the wind, the stars shone above, and Mara knew she was exactly where she belonged.